Roy.
Yeah, straight years.
Okay.
They haven't been.
Okay, can we call our meeting, March 2nd meeting of the Acton School Committee and the Warrant and Finance Committee to order at this time? And what we'd like to do before we actually begin our meeting tonight is to just remember John Moore, who was a very faithful attendee at all of our meetings for so many years and served well on the Warrant and Finance Committee and as our representative to the school. I think we all agree that John always listened, and his analogies were always based on fairness, trying to be fair to the taxpayers, and also he listened to how it was going to affect the school. And his absence is certainly going to be very much noticed at all of our meetings from now on. So could we just have just a moment of silence in remembrance of John, please? Thank you.
If I may, I
Yes.
have a minor thing to add to that.
Okay.
This I got from town clerk,
Okay.
and she communicates that John's, I believe, brother, Frank Moore, has indicated that there will be a memorial service on Saturday, March 26th at 4 p.m. at the Acton Congregational Church. Following the memorial service, all will be invited to a time of fellowship at the town hall. In an effort to assist the family, we've offered to organize all of the food for the evening. Could you please pass this information on to your committee and ask that if anyone is interested in bringing a food item, to please contact me directly? And that's from Jennifer Rue at the Acton Town Hall. So there will be activities to memorialize John, which is excellent.
I think Frank is John's son.
Son?
Yeah, I believe so.
I guess I just need to read the obit and I'll find that out.
You said March 26th at 4.
March 26th at
Yes.
4.
Frank. Yes. Terry, New Hampshire, son.
And if any of you want to contribute to the food for that, if you let me know, I'll contact Jen for our school committee and tell her we'll be glad to help out with that. And before we go any further, we have a new member on the Warrant and Finance Committee, Chuck Heffron. He's new to only people who haven't seen him here before. He has served previously on the Warrant and Finance Committee, and we welcome him tonight.
Thank you.
I think our order of business tonight is to just take a look. Oh, now you did it. Did you get that on tape? No.
Don't get that.
I think our order of business tonight is just to go down through the various parts of the budget. I think there have been very little changes, if any, since the last time that we met. So I think what the school committee would be looking for tonight would be any input that the Warrant and Finance Committee members might have on any parts of the budget, any suggestions that you might have that might differ from what we've already proposed to you in the revised budget that you have. And I know the only other thing that we need to revisit would be the library position, and when we get there, we'll talk about that. Let's see. So if you want to just take your,
This is the last one I have, Chuck.
if you want to just take your budgets and take a look at them, does anyone have any questions or suggestions on the guidance section, 2120?
I guess the only thing I'd like to ask Judy is the difference, the budget, the working budget itself is going down this year from last year. Is that correct? And what is the number that it's going down?
I think it's going down because we have a new person this year. Our guidance person left us last year, and we got somebody that's lower on the scale, is that correct?
And no insurance.
Yeah, and doesn't take our
So
insurance,
that's the
so.
difference.
That's the difference.
That's what I thought. And the roof is going to be a separate warrant article outside of the working budget. That's
Correct.
correct, that the people can vote up or down, so.
Correct.
That has no reflection on it.
No reflection on this budget at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or suggestions on the guidance section? All right, then, let's move on to the next section, which is the nurses section. Any suggestions from the committee on the nurses section or questions? The increase in the nurses section, we might just mention is in, she is taking a couple of classes. Or is that one class?
That amount would be.
That amount would be two, I think, maybe.
No, that's probably one.
Probably one. And the other increase in this particular section comes under supplies, which went up considerably this year due to the fact that for the last 2 years, we've been really skimping and using up everything that we possibly had, and the supplies were extremely low, so she really needed to replenish her supply, so that was the other increase there. Any place else, Chuck, just for your benefit, where you see, under group insurance, you'll see that, that's an estimated amount that we put in because we don't have an actual figure yet from Blue Cross Blue Shield, from Anthem. So we put in an estimated, increase in that to be sure that we're covered for the group insurance for all the personnel. That pretty much accounts for the increase in that particular section. Any questions or suggestions for us?
I think a lot of this we've gone through. The last meeting, you were real thorough, with really going through everything, and we've all taken some time. We've been emailing back and forth, so.
That's not to say that we don't have some things to say about some other pages, so.
Yes, no, that's
It's a
fine.
good
And the other
exercise.
thing
Let's
too, I
just go to
thought,
the pages they need.
Yeah, let's
yeah,
just do
I
the
was
pages.
just trying to be considerate of Chuck
okay.
too, who hasn't been in
I
on.
can read it over and over.
Okay.
Yeah, get
All
caught
right.
up. Yeah.
So what page would we like to go to then? Paul, do you have some pages you'd like to talk to us about?
I guess we should jump to, well, actually, the thing that we knew we had to talk about, which is the library. Page 5.
Okay, our discussion last time under the library was, Tricia talked about possibly increasing the librarian to 3 days a week. We were weighing the cost of that against, reducing the, ed tech to 2 days and upping her to 3, which would have been a fairly substantial increase in the budget. John Moore, in fact, had made the suggestion that if we were going to increase it to 2 days, maybe we should look at increasing that to 5 days, because the cost between 3 and 5 days, the differential was fairly small. Carleen sent us out, I think everybody got those figures, the 3 different things. I came in yesterday and sat down and talked with Trish to get some more input from her regarding this, because this request had really come from her anyway. And correct me if I'm mistaken, but from our conversation yesterday, Trish suggested to me that we leave this the way it is this year, make some other internal changes that will not affect the budget, but that maybe will improve the efficiency of the working of the library with the 2 people that we have, and revisit this next year to see what we want to do about increasing it. Did you want to Was I right on that, or did you want to say anything else? Or?
No, I think you said it well. I just, say that the changes that we've gone through over the last 3 years resulted in a vision and a process that were no longer aligned. And that this really came down to, we need to talk vision-wise, where are we heading for our current students in the future, the next 5 years, what are we looking at? And once that's clarified, then I think how best to proceed with the library and other places we have cut and reduced, then could be made decisions based on, what we feel is best for the school. So I think to prevent that from happening again, kind of a patchwork or a piecemeal decision, that we really need to look at it as a school district, as where we headed, and have that vision be defined, and have the budget and other decisions then be tested against that vision when we make those decisions. And to me, then we're having a long-term range plan, as opposed to, like I said, a patchwork every year, try to make do with something less than what we want to. So I think really it's just too much to do at this time, to do it well, and I really want to do it well.
So basically, I'm hearing that the proposal would be to retain what the patchwork arrangement that is happening as we speak, carry it forward, because anything else is pretty much financially untenable, I would say.
It's a tough time, and again, I think it's really important that we, before we get to budget season next year, we have a clear vision of where we're headed. And then those budget decisions should match that vision as best as possible. But right now, I don't feel we're in a position to do that as a group. Not under these current budget conditions right now.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. We haven't discussed it as a group, but that's certainly the conclusion I came to in looking at these numbers, that, keeping in mind that in each case, each of these 3 scenarios, we're talking 40 hours. And I don't think we have any huge assurances of what difference in quality each of these arrangements would give each of those 40-hour segments. But certainly the difference in the money is rather gripping. Just for the record, we've got currently we've got $37,413 for 2-day librarian, 3-day ed tech, $62,702 for 3-day librarian, 2-day ed tech, and then a 5-day librarian, no ed tech would be $75,556. So clearly, we're talking, $40,000 on the bottom line at the end of the budget, and that's somewhat compelling in my mind.
And I think it also speaks, Paul, to a larger issue that we've been dealing with for several years now, is here's what we wanted and we believed what was best, and then the budget got cut and we said, okay, how do we make do? And we said, here's what is best, and the budget got cut, and then we said, how do we make do? Well, now we've got lots of patches on making do.
Right.
And so we no longer have defined what is really in the best interest of our students. We're now defined what's making do. So I really felt like, it was naive on my part, and I told Judy that, and I told Bump that, part of my learning curve is timing things out. So I really believe that we need to take a step back, do a good plan, and then after that vision and plan is in place, then the budget shouldn't be measured against it. And if we say, okay, that's what we really believe and we can't afford something, we then have to have that discussion of priorities. But I think right now we have done so much cutting and so much patchwork for so long that we don't even have that clear vision any longer. It's covered up. So I really feel that that's much more valuable to our students to have that clear vision.
Certainly, I think it would be more valuable when this is discussed next year to have some type of qualitative assessment of what these 3 choices, which will probably be substantially similar, represent. Right now, at least for myself, I'm just looking at those numbers and going, well, no big decision here.
Right.
But if there was something that said, oh, well, with this, yeah, it costs more, but
This is what you'll
this
get.
is what you get.
And there are other places in the school
and what is
curriculum
the
that that
quality to the
discussion.
kids,
Right.
essentially.
We did to the computer lab, we've done it over and over again. throughout the school. And I do, I think that needs to be an honest and healthy discussion, first about what's educationally valued, and then second, how do we fund it? So I really don't want to mire the waters with having them try to be the same conversation during budget season. So I
Yep,
have
thank you.
taken that back.
And I think the other thing that, one of the other things that we talked about is also the fact that we have to look at everything that we've taken away from our programs. We have to look at the literacy specialist, we have to look at the computer technician, the computer teaching, the computer lab, we've taken away foreign languages. All the things that we've, and the library services, everything that's been reduced, we need to try to figure out how we can start to work some of these things back into the program. And I think that's what Tricia's talking about, is coming up with a plan that will give us some focus and give us some priorities so that we can start working on restoring some of the services to the kids that we've had to take away.
Great. I mean, if you look at the school budget in comparison with, say, the economy, the economy of Maine, the economy of the US, I don't think anybody is going to doubt that in the last few years, we've had a contraction of the whole economy. And anything that isn't in lockstep with that is going to be suffering. But on the other hand, when it re-expands, it would be reasonable to try to restore some of this stuff because it does have value for the kids. Not this year, though. I mean,
Not this year, right.
Thank you.
Agreed. Anybody else have any input on the library situation? We all in agreement on that?
Yep.
And I spoke with, both Richard and Betty mentioned the library position when they called me tonight, and they're also in agreement with leaving it as it is for this year.
I think your explanation was excellent just now, how you just painted the whole picture that maybe we can come back and visit this, I guess my only concern was to follow up on what Judy said, that I think a huge loss, value-wise, was the foreign language, that didn't have a chance to go before the people. And, something like this, I think it's very important, as everybody does, but with your explanation, moving forward, that more of a plan, to see where it stands and what we can bring forward in the future. I agree with the school committee, and I commend them for making a courageous cut. That's something that's, I think, is great value, and something that definitely has to be looked at again in the future, I mean, that foreign language, I remember, Mary, when you were on 15 years ago, when I got on, before there was foreign language, that was your driving, remember that? You're on the school committee, it's all, that someday Acton would have foreign language. I mean, everybody's value of education is different, and that is huge, foreign language, especially in today's world, it's massive, and to try to get everybody to understand, we all look at it differently, but to me, that was just a huge loss, and it's just a shame that it didn't go before the people, that it wasn't part of the budget. I'm not, I understand that these times are very tough, and that was kind of what I was worried about with this here. I know that there's more value, as far as where you're trying to go with this, but with your explanation, I agree with what the school committee and everything is, maybe there has to be more time. And
I think it's also important, I am trusted with ensuring that what the school committee and the school department wants, I'm entrusted with the daily running and making sure it's happening. But it should not be me making the vision. It has to be a collective agreement of what the vision is. And then I will ensure the daily carrying
But I think
out.
you're in here every day, and you have a good, just by listening to the last meeting, that you have a feel that none of us do, you know what I mean? And although you want to explain and have everybody on board, I can tell that you're passionate about that, and you believe in that it's the right thing for, But I mean, this board here has had to, the things that they've had to deal with, any school committee is, it's unbelievable, between the consolidation and just the cuts and just the whole atmosphere, is, financial atmosphere is just amazing, and, I credit this whole group for everything they've done over the last few years, that. But your explanation was excellent tonight.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the library? We all set on that? Now, the figures that we have in here are for 3 days, is that true, Colleen, or are they for 2?
Yes, I just changed them on consent agenda.
You just changed it? Okay. So what will the bottom line figure be there
For the library,
for the library for,
$37,413.
how much?
$37,413 would be the total,
37,413.
and the difference would be $1,683.
And what would
And
that
it's a
percent?
reduction
Doesn't
of,
show.
4.71.
reduction of 44,183 thus far in the budget.
Right.
What was the difference, Colleen?
On the library,
Yeah.
$1,683.
Thank you.
And you'll zip this off to us by, so I can put it in. No, don't bother to send it to me now.
She can zip it right off. You've got mail.
Oh, okay, well, let's see. Okay, were there other areas that you wanted to take a look at, Paul? Some other concerns?
I guess I'm looking for some understanding. First of all, the reason we're even having this discussion at this particular point is because I became aware since our last meeting, or at least I was told, and you can tell me if I'm correct or not here, that at least the teacher's contract is coming up for renewal. It's ending with this budget year, and it is coming up for renewal before the budget that we're discussing. So that, in other words, that the budget we're talking about here for 2011, 2012 is going to be working on a budget that is yet to be devised. Is that a
Which is
reasonable statement?
Normal operational practice in education.
Right. So pursuant to our earlier discussion about things we can do and things we can't do, and trying to do the things we can do when we can do them, if that makes any sense at all, I'd like to have an understanding generally of, number one, I guess the difference between your hopes for going into a budget discussion versus your expectations of going into that budget discussion. I understand that on our side of this discussion, you know, we have a set of committee members who are not, you know, dyed-in-the-wool negotiators every day doing all this contract stuff. On the other side, we have union representatives, we have the rank and file of the union membership, and we have probably a lawyer or two, okay? And, you know, the whole David and Goliath thing. So what I find frustrating
We'll try to answer.
is that, and I assume that I've been fairly accurate so far. What I'm trying to get a handle
Except the
on,
lawyer thing, because we don't like to incur any expense. Go ahead.
well, not for you guys, but on the other, what I'm saying on the
They
other
don't,
side.
they don't have a,
No, they don't need them?
they have,
They're good without them.
You have advice.
Yeah?
Maybe I can speak, since I'm not in negotiations this year, but I have, in years past, been on the negotiating team
Right.
for the staff. You have a boatload of resources behind you on both sides if you need to access them. The intent is to go in and negotiate a fair and reasonable contract for all people to work with. If it is truly fair and reasonable, it is not perfectly amenable to either side.
Let's all bleed.
Okay,
I understand.
okay.
Right.
So there's this concession. So let's take, for instance, right now, if they're going in as teachers, they're thinking, okay, we took a furlough day last year, we took a pay freeze last year. They're going in hoping to improve their salary to some degree, hoping to retain benefits to some degree. The school board and their representatives would be going in and looking at how can we keep good teachers but save some money. Where can we give, but where are we really hoping to save? So health benefits, huge cost, always on the discussion table. Salary, huge cost. And then there's other things within the contract, sick days, personal days, professional days, how many benefits that are not necessarily material, but, like duty-free lunch, things like that, those things are all part of the contract negotiation. So the school board sends, you have 2 representatives, so you can't have a majority. The teacher side, I think, has 3. Again, you can't have a majority. So they go in, and they are not to speak of it while they're going through the process. There's a kind of a hush. And then you say, well, you may have to go back and ask your sides whether they would agree to. And that happens from time to time. And then it's up to those people that you've entrusted, that small group, to then say, okay, well, you want that. If we give you that, then, it's going to cost us over here. Can we, and then that's how it works. So the outside, I'm certainly somebody who's affected by everything that comes out of this, and I have no say in it because of my position. I'm not union, and I'm not school board, and so I have no say. But like I said, having been through it before, that's how it worked out, that you have that give and take discussion. School board wants to see, that they have quality staff members who feel valued, but at the same time they're watching the dollar sign. The teachers, also they want to feel valued. One of the ways in which we, in our society, show somebody's value is monetarily. There are some things that aren't monetary that are expressed in the contract. The professional days, the sick bank, any of those kind of things. And it's a back and forth. Sometimes one of the sides go in with a definite set of mind that here is our breaking point, we hope for this, but, here's where we're going to draw the line. And those of us outside of that negotiations may not know what that line is. And we won't know until afterwards, till they're done, what the final, what they could live with, what they could walk away with. And so it's kind of a frustrating thing to be on the outside. But you can't have 45 people all discussing the contract. You'd never get done. You'd never get through it. So, and both sides compare themselves or the contract to viable school districts in the area. So what are Sanford teachers getting paid? What are Wells teachers getting for benefits? Those kind of discussions. If a teacher wasn't working here, where else would they work? So you're not going to compare a teacher's salary here to somebody up in Bangor. There's just no sense. They're in a whole different realm. So you're going to look at this area. What are the going rates? What are the benefits? What are people paying for 20-year service? What are people paying for full family? Who gets dental? Whose school district doesn't? And some things and I've noticed this, it's very kind of peculiar, there are partial steps or longer steps in somebody's district. So you say, well, they've got 25 steps. Yeah, but their steps are smaller along the way. Somebody else has a longevity clause built in. 10 years in the district, they get this bonus amount. Somebody else doesn't, but they pay more for the masters. So you do the best you can, compare and keep yourself competitive. You don't want to be at the bottom, and you don't want to be at the top. But you've got to stay competitive. And so it's a challenge.
Are there certain inherited premises as you move forward on that negotiation? Like, for instance, you're saying, like a step structure or what have you. Whatever you've been doing in the past, you probably want to have as your starting point continuing that structure as opposed to changing it every 3 years or every 2 years. That kind of would make sense for continuity. So,
Right.
so you sort of inherit a set of constraints that have a certain inertia about them.
Yes.
That will move forward, and unless there's a really good reason to do something different, we're probably going to do this, we're probably going to do that because we did that in the past.
And other school districts around us are also doing it. That's a norm of the business. Yes, those things do happen. And every once in a while you have a surprise that somebody did think of outside the box. And I'll give you one example that I know of. There's probably more. But I know several years ago under Brian's suggestion, there was a short-term and long-term disability piece added in. It seems at first like there's initial cost, but in the long run, he calculated for the district, it's actually a savings. Now, the teachers gave up some 90 days for cumulative leave. Like under my contract when I was teaching, I could collect up to 180. But that means if I got sick for a long term, that came out of that 180. Now there's this short-term, long-term disability, which the school only pays a fraction of if you're out for a long period of time. But it also means teachers can't collect that beyond that 90 amount of their own. So it's not like a perfect formula that you can compare directly one contract to another, but that was a shift. That was a paradigm. That was a totally different way of looking at where are our costs going. Well, if a teacher has a long-term disability, it is costing the district for the substitute as well as for the teacher's full pay while they're out. That disability piece, 40%?
60%, the school pays 40% if they have sick time left. They can take their sick time.
So,
But
you
it
know.
pays 60% of their salary, which, that's 60% of that teacher's salary, we're not paying them while they're out. And that's money that is paying for their substitute and then some. So that we are saving money, and we've used it, I think it was like the first 2 weeks after the contract, it kicked in.
So those would be one of those unusual changes. But the step system, until we get more radical with
Merit pay.
merit pay or, you know, even evaluation, kind of some other way of measuring teacher success, that's been the norm.
Okay, well, that leads right into my two suggestions for this process. First of all, you know, just doing the math. You know, okay, so we have it's probably reasonable to say that on an annual basis, with any of these contracts, and I've seen that sometimes it's a little less, sometimes a little more, and sometimes it's hard to tell because of teachers shifting around, but roughly, I think you could say that 3% increase per year across the board, that's kind of what I'm seeing at least. I guess I will have to say that I don't fully understand why we have the step system, why we have a strictly time-based mechanism, which will, sure as the clock ticks away, is going to increase our budget every year, you know, regardless of the economy, regardless of extraneous events. Here it goes. Nothing, you know, here it goes. Nothing you can do about it. Just keeps doing this. So, you know, 10 years, you've got, you know, 1/3 increase in your budget just because. It doesn't matter if it's a down economic time. It just keeps happening. So certainly what I'd like to see, and this is one of my hopes versus expectations. I'd love to see an arrangement or thought given to contracts as they come up to migrating over to a merit system, you know, where you're not, I'll say this after having said that I have a lot of respect for the personnel at the school. I haven't met anybody that I feel is doing a bad job. And, you know, education is important. But having a pay system which gives you raise like clockwork and everybody's treated the same, you're promoting mediocrity. You know, there's no reason to go over and above unless you have a personal satisfaction in doing so. There's no monetary reason for doing so.
That's where evaluations come in and should be done.
Bingo.
Every year, evaluation, and strict evaluation.
And so we now have this method of doing that and evaluating teachers, and
That's, you know,
and that's very recent.
Right.
Very
It's very
recent.
brand
But,
new.
but being able to
A month or
take,
two.
say, a smaller budget for raises, you know, a third to a half of what we're doing now, and pinpoint, target those to the teachers that either can take a test well, I guess, if you're evaluating them, or somehow, you know, that the ones that are excelling should be rewarded, absolutely. I think it would not only save money in the long run, but it would also, I think, allow the cream to rise to the top, as in terms of talent, in terms of incentive to go over and above and do an excellent job.
Now,
It's
in
only
in
human
answer
nature.
to that, what was the president's race to the top, correct? That was meritorial, wasn't it? The race to the top. And we were supposed to, in the state of Maine, get some legislation in, and it didn't happen. It didn't pass. But it had to do with that race to the top money, which would pay teachers according to merit, I believe.
Well,
The application didn't get, from the
Oh,
state,
the
didn't get
state.
sent in a timely manner. I believe that's what happened, wasn't it? Bob?
and the race to top is also, wouldn't you agree, tied to a lot of punitive things as well, as opposed to incentive to do well. It's also done, if you haven't been making the AYP for 3 years in a row, you got on the hit list and you had to, it was a punitive way of earning the money. That's where you hear about the whole schools being fired, and, you know, if the principal's been there more than 2 years, the principal gets fired. And the town had to agree to the punitive method, or else they couldn't get the money.
Right, so anyway,
So
Ma-
it's-
Maine, it never got to Maine, you know, we didn't get that.
They didn't get their application in on
But
time.
with the president saying that, you know, there was a merit-based system, it kinda, I think, freaked out every teacher in every school across the nation, because they are used to that.
Right.
I mean, I'm talking, it's not in Maine, it's everywhere. The
Right.
step system is out there.
Right, and that's
For
where I'm
a-
approaching
one
this
little town of
cautiously
Acton
and
to
trying to figure out what's
change it
possible, you know?
Would be, you know, asking all these teachers to say, we're gonna do something different.
Right.
Well,
I'm not saying it can't be done, but the other thing is with the evaluation thing, why not put, you know, something in a contract that says, we're gonna put aside X amount of dollars, and those people who excel, you know, we can give them from that pool or something. I mean, in the future, we can have something that shows an excellent teacher, or, you know, gives monetarily to an excellent teacher.
Right.
It's something we could look at.
And it allows us to fine tune the budget a little bit more and doesn't just guarantee that regardless of quality of education, you know, we're going up 3% next year. Nothing you can do about it. And, you know, that's what's really frustrating to me. You know, just looking at the record of what's happened in the past, what inevitably will happen in the future. It's like, you know, a budget run amok that nobody can really, you know, it's a moving train. We can't do anything about it. And that's got to be a fundamentally wrong approach, but I'm trying to poke it a little bit and figure out what is wrong about that approach. You know, how can we take these big dollars and direct them more intelligently and still get the job done?
I think another thing that's good that's coming up too is that a part of the teacher evaluation process is going to be based on student performance and student successes. Correct?
It will
And
not be.
that's- I mean, that's when it gets to the place where that's really has a little bit more importance. I think it'll make a lot more sense.
It won't be like your kids didn't do well on the national norm test this year, you're taking a pay cut. Because certainly in a small district especially, you have to be very careful of weighting success on one single class.
Right.
Some other time I will share with you the direction which teacher evaluations are headed. It's a much more complex and difficult process than it has been in the past. With the school board's permission, I've changed it this year under that new direction of recognizing excellence and giving clear feedback on where growth can happen. And it's true, it has not been there in the past. And the state is moving in this direction as much as the nation. So they've given me that permission to pilot it this way with the school, with the teachers. They've all been working under this program of new evaluation. And that's where it'll have to start, because the evaluation is not under the contract, other than says you will be evaluated by the approved policy of the school. And then the language of the evaluation process will allow for the recognition of excellence. But it is a transition year. I'm thrilled to be doing it. It's a lot of work. It's a very big change.
So
And it's a worthwhile-
right now, if we don't at this very moment have salary elements tied to that, right now,
No.
is it more of a pat on the head and a hearty well done? Or is there anything other, you know, like when we find out where things are heading with individual teachers, how well they're doing, is it simply a recognition of that, yep, you're doing a great job, keep it up? Or is there something else that might be a little bit more of a carrot approach?
Well, the carrot approach will have to come afterwards, after the finalized language, and the school board will have final say on that piece. As will will have final say. You're familiar with the language from the testing about meets and exceeds and does
Right.
not meet, okay. So the school board will also have final say. Bump and I will sit down and go over that language and ask them to approve a policy that says if a teacher has a does not meet, X amount of times or in X amount of areas or such and such, they'll be put on a plan to receive support to improve. And, there'll be guidelines as to when do you stop helping, or when do you recognize that a teacher is up where they need to be? So, like I said, it's much more complex than just you're great or you're not. And, we're going to be very careful to articulate all the different areas and subcategories that come into the teaching profession. It's a very diverse thing, and we're expecting a lot of teachers, we're expecting a lot of our students, so I want to make sure that that language is clear. Like I said, I can gladly show you the rubric that we're
Right.
piloting under. But just like anything else that you take from somewhere else, you try it out, and then you've got to make it your own. You've got to make sure it works for Acton. We are unique. We are both primary and middle school. Most, schools are more segregated, more separate from groups. So we're working towards that. But there's no way that this budget negotiation time period can address all of that.
Sure. I'm not looking for a quantum change here. I'm looking to figure
Yes.
out, what the receptivity is and move in a direction. Long term, if we think long term, we're in it for the long haul. But if we start moving in the right direction, perhaps more than we have been, it does seem that the fact that this evaluation process is well advanced, that's quite fortunate for this discussion, I think. I think they'll tie together quite well, that you can hook that incentive onto this process that's already
I
begun.
guess, let me just tell you, the whole step system, if you're teaching, you have a bachelor's and you've got 5 years of experience and you were in Acton. Now, you have to move, you're going to Portland, I feel sorry for you, but they got to figure out where you're going to go, and they go, oh, you're a bachelor, 5 years experience. They look on their step and go, that's the salary you're getting. So the step serves a purpose,
Right.
It
like
also
that.
prevented years ago, with the unions coming in, with people saying, wow, we've got a lot of teachers that are veteran teachers. And instead of valuing the experience, towns, it was just shortly before I came here, towns got rid of the expensive ones. And kids suffered because the turnover was tremendous.
Right.
You don't want a school full of 3 years and less,
Right.
and yet there is, yes, a cost for experience. So the balancing act is always going to be a challenge. I don't care what method you have in
Right.
place. And I want veteran, high-quality teachers to be valued. And like I said, in our society, monetary rewards are part of the value system.
To hold on to that experience when comparing it to other,
Yeah.
districts around. I mean, it's,
But I think for us as a board too, this new evaluation system allows us to say to the community, we're putting a system in place that's holding teachers accountable. Whatever level they're at, whether they're on the top of the scale and a veteran teacher, or whether they're down near the bottom, this evaluative process will hold teachers accountable for doing what they're supposed to do and for meeting the needs of the kids in their classrooms and for being responsible for the outcomes that they get from their kids.
And I have not been shy about it, Paula. I've learned a lot in the last 2 years taking this job over. I'm thrilled to be able to work still here. I want an excellent school. I want an excellent school filled with excellent staff. I want to be the gem of your county. And that's going to take where we are, which is good, and moving us forward.
Right.
So there's no resting here. We have a staff of tremendous dedication. Our students are served in many different ways. And yet there's room for growth. And it's my job to do the evaluation well. And one of the first things I said to the school board last year is, I don't have a tool that's allowing me to do that. We need to change the tool.
Right.
Because I legally was bound by the tool. So, I asked, please, help me out here. And of course, they said yes, they want the best too. So it's a process that we are going through. And I think even in 5 years, there'll be drastic changes and improvements in all of education because of this time period we are going through. Because a lot of people are saying, hey, what about excellence and what are you doing to recognize it?
Right.
Just like people cry the other way saying, well, if they got tenure, they don't have to do anything. Tenure means nothing to me. You got to earn your job. Tenure is not, tenure, if people stay in their job too long, a big reason is that the administrator has not done a good job evaluating and giving feedback and showing the teachers where they need to improve. And that's a huge part of that job in any district. It's cumbersome, and it's awkward at times, and all those other wonderful things that comes with confronting challenging situations. But that's the administrator's job.
But isn't your job, the teacher's job, changing all the time? It almost seems with every administration, like No Child Left Behind came in.
And they're
Half of
talking
it
about
was-
changing it right now.
No, I mean, half
Yeah.
of it was unfunded, but the
Yep.
demands were on you people to make it happen.
Absolutely.
Now the AYP, how do you go about doing that? I mean, now you're teaching the kids, is it structured to pass an AYP exam in comparison to, I mean, how do you do that? Literally, I don't know. I mean, do you have a meeting, you call the staff in and you create a plan? I mean, these are the things that the demands on teachers that, you know, in districts that people don't know about. I don't know.
I think again, that's where when I said about the vision at the beginning of this meeting, that in order to make the budget decisions, you have to first go back and say, what are we valuing most?
But is that what you have to try to guide? I mean, where this AYP is so important, is there, you know, a curriculum or something you put in place that is geared towards passing that and not
Yes
things
and
that
no.
you'd normally want to teach in a classroom?
Well, we had to give things
Basically
up.
control the direction, or?
It does not control all of it. It does impact every day. Today in my staff meeting, the discussion was day of dance. Sorry, you're going to get next week's report today, but it's really important to understand. The first piece of our staff meeting was the day of dance, which we had a totally multicultural K-8 mixed up experience. It was fabulous. And I said to my staff, okay, you know it was fabulous. I know it was fabulous. The kids are talking about it. Why? What is it that makes that so important? It's not going to show on a data page. It's not going to show on an NWEA test. But we know it's really good. Why? And so we had that discussion first. And then my second half, or 3/4 of it, was, okay, here are our kneecap scores. Here's how we did. What do you notice? What did you learn from that? How will this impact your teaching? What can we do to help those that are still struggling? And again, those discussions. And it is my job to do a lot more research than the staff on these things, but it has to be a shared piece. I can no way say to them, here's the curriculum, just do it. Trust me. They have to have say in it, they have to have understanding, they have to have buy-in, because they're the ones that have to translate it to the students. So it is a constant, even just in my office, I have a stack, I'm sure Bump in his office, stack of educational magazines and, you know, brochures and all those things. And it's our job to sift through and say, okay, what really is needed for our students? You know, and I will, when we have the discussions about the vision, you know, talk to Bump, and we will talk to the school board and say, you know.
No, but I know what Jim is saying. It's like when the main learning results came out. We got to teach to the learning results, or, you know, align everything to the learning results. Then there was a whole assessment piece. They worked years, teachers, and then it was chop, we're not doing assessment. It was like, whoa.
Yep.
A lot of
Local
time.
assessments, yes.
A lot of time spent on that. And then it was just taken out from under the local. It was like, forget it, we can't do it. Or I don't know what happened, because I was like, what happened to the local
Well,
assessment
I think the mandate went away, but I think what was fortunate for us was that the assessments continued here at the Acton School, although work was not done in vain.
No, it's
because
not done in vain,
they
but it's
put a
been
lot to it,
added,
but it,
and
yeah, just gave
added,
more
you know,
things to it.
burden.
And it is those pieces, why we need professional after-school activity, why we need workshop. It is a lot.
It's
And
a different job, really, than what it was 15 years ago.
Oh,
here.
absolutely.
I mean, it's just,
Absolutely,
the change is shifting on your feet, and, I mean,
absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, there's no doubt that some staff responds to it better than others. There's no doubt that there are principals who are better at guiding their schools than others. It's a challenge. It is absolutely a challenge to stay on top of it, to decide what is actually not worth beating your head against the wall for. I would say, based on our AYP scores and the success our Acton students have at the high school level, that we are doing a great job, and have been, you know, those that came before me, of filtering what's not as important as compared to what is. We have grade levels at times that have a gap that's below the state, but our school average every year since they've been measuring AYP, we have been ahead of the state every year. And that means we've grown every year. You know, so every year we have made incremental progress. And our students are coming back and saying that they felt prepared for high school. So we have not taught to the test so badly that they're not able to function out in a different setting. You know, they're not that trained. And yet, we still have to ask the question, what do we need to do that's to improve? It is a constant, it's always. That's also what makes it exciting. It's hard work, but it's good hard work. And it's valuable. You know, but the other piece of that is the citizen, the child who, you know, needs to feel cared for. We need to have curriculum that supports all parts. You know, we need the phys ed, we need the music. You know, music teacher sent me an email today. You have every student who's starting the instruments this year and the last year. We're looking at a band of 30 kids next year. Yeah, I said, great, where am I going to have a practice? I'm waiting for their band
Especially with
practice
those new
day.
drum sets you're gonna be.
I'm going to get those drum sets. I mean, that's phenomenal.
amazing.
It is
It
amazing.
absolutely amazing.
And, you know, so again, we procured ourselves an incredibly talented young musician who's a music teacher, and we got to ask ourselves, do we value this? I do. I know what it's doing for these kids. You know, I see the pride when they walk around the school. She'll take 2 or 3 at a time who learned a new song, and they come and they just, can we pop in for a minute and show you what we've learned? And so, you know, it is those little steps that are impacting the whole. A child who loves band or loves phys ed or loves art is going to enjoy other parts of their day because they're looking forward to that one that's their best, their favorite. So, you know, Acton has, and I know this is a digression of the regular budget piece, but Acton has done a fantastic job, despite all the cuts, to try to protect and take care of the whole child. You know, and I want to see that continue, and we need to do that with a plan. And the budget has to be part of that plan, but it can't be the first part. You know, so as we keep changing and keep growing and try to adapt to all the state and the federal mandates, in Acton we have still stayed the course of the child first. What is important for the student? And that's remarkable in these times. And I do commend the school board for making tough decisions and saying, okay, I don't want to cut that, but if I have to make a choice, you know, what's best for the child? And it shows. Our kids are still fabulous children who go off to be successful. And, you know, our scores are a result of that rather than the direct intention. I think it's secondary. The scores will keep coming up as long as their education is high quality all around. And that's what I expect. And that's what my teachers expect.
I just want to mention, and I think this is what I'm seeing, is when we look over the last 6 years, FY7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Coming up with this budget we're trying to present. We've only gone up $3,900 in 6 years.
In what?
Gross budget.
That's interesting. So where did it contract? Because, you know, the couple of years I've looked at, including where things were frozen last year, I definitely saw a decrease in the increase last year, but I didn't look back far enough to see that 7 years ago, we roughly had the same budget we got now.
We do.
So where did it contract, and how did it contract?
It's
more-
called
more
Spanish.
particularly?
Bye-bye.
Ah, so pulling curriculum.
Pulling
lost
curriculum.
services.
Teachers,
So now we're
Literacy
spending
specialists.
as much for less, essentially.
In the positions like the cafeteria you were talking about.
That's
you
right.
got
Yeah.
some
Custodial.
consolidated with Sanford.
The contracted help as opposed to the hired help,
That's it, that has saved us a lot.
yeah,
2 days.
Superintendent, special ed
Superintendent
director.
reduction.
interesting, yeah.
$3,000.
It's gone, I mean, it's gone down, but it,
FY7 was 4,992, 453.
million.
4 million.
Sorry. I wish it was. Hey, listen, I've been in meetings since 2 o'clock. Okay. So it's 4,992,453. This one that we're hopefully gonna propose, and I think this is my new number, is 4,996,366. That's what
We
library
just reduced
corrected.
that by,
Yeah,
$25,000.
So I have 4971077.
that's because we just
Yeah,
reduced
'cause I just
25.
changed the library.
Well, I put the change in the library there.
And
So
again-
my bottom line number,
Gonna decrease by 25,000
to-
something.
what'd you say it was?
4971077.
Oh, yeah, that's what I got.
So there's not much difference.
You know, I put the wrong number. 4
Okay.
million. So it's less.
That's amazing.
Okay,
That's
this is,
interesting.
Yep.
I mean, this is less
People
than
don't
FY
look at it
seven.
that way.
It's crazy.
Interesting. Okay, so my last point on this subject, as in salaries, is the insurance, health insurance, copay. In boom times, it was quite common in various industries to see 100% payment of insurance. And the employee had all of their insurance paid for through their salary system. They didn't have to cough up anything. With, say, the last, I'll even use 5 years, in the world at large, progressively every year, we're seeing fewer and fewer companies doing that because, everybody's tightening the purse, having to compromise a little bit more, and we're seeing the co-pays go up, and the employer paying less of that insurance burden as the insurance goes up inevitably every year. So my is this reasonable question would be, is this reasonable that we, and I don't know if you are or not, that we're not apparently thinking of that as new contracts are coming up, and we're not necessarily, that I see, decreasing the payment for the employer and increasing to some degree the copay for the employee, 85%, 90%, something less than 100, moving in that direction.
I think I can tell you that the board has had this discussion ad nauseum sometimes. And it is all a part of the contract negotiations. That's about all I can tell you about that. But do we think that it's reasonable, what you're saying? Absolutely. And I think the board would agree with that.
Well,
But what we can, it's, whatever influence we have in that direction depends on the outcome of the overall contract that's negotiated.
But again, I go back to the state level. When I found out last year through support staff negotiation, we really have nothing else to go by except Blue Cross Blue Shield, all right? That's it.
You're talking about in terms of overall cost.
In Maine.
No,
Maine.
we're talking about
If they
choice of
opened it up,
providers.
if at the national level, whatever level, they can open it up for us to go to Aetna, travel. I don't know what's out there in different states, but if I could have went and said, here's my 50 people, whatever it is, I want them to have insurance, give me a rate, or give me a quote, and I get a quote, and I could shop around, free market enterprise. Anyway, I just think that would really help. But when I found out there is Aetna here, I think there's Harvard Pilgrim. Harvard Pilgrim said, no, thank you, not interested. Aetna said, here, but, no. It was too high. And so you go with Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the main teachers union. They have 70,000 members. It should bring the cost down. It doesn't, and I am worried about where the money is going instead of into Blue Cross Blue Shield. So there's very little
Suspicious and
leeway.
cynical.
Very little
Very
leeway.
encouraging to see.
I'm just telling you, when you can't go anywhere except, okay, Blue Cross Blue Shield, what do you do? I
Any
mean,
color
to
as long as
reduce
it's
the
black.
cost, the cost, I want to reduce it, and I can't shop around.
Is the copay a factor of the provider, or is it tacked on after the fact at the discretion of the employer?
It's
In
a
other words,
part of-
I'm
it's a part
hearing
of the
it's the former
negotiation.
here.
It's a part of the negotiation process.
Okay,
The
so,
percentage that the-
so the purchase from the insurance agency is, okay, here's the number. And then after that, you can slice and dice that at your discretion, correct?
It's a
Between-
plan. It's a plan, and the
Right.
plan decides if
But
it's
it's
a
not-
$10 copay, $20 copay.
It's
No,
post,
talking
it's
about
post-insurance
percentage.
company. It doesn't involve the insurance company, is what I'm saying.
Negotiate the percentage.
That's
the
a,
town
that's a
pays.
percentage,
Right,
that's part of the
negotiated
negotiations.
at the contract in question, not with the insurance company.
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay, that's,
And again, the comparisons are used from district to district. And,
Right.
in order
And
to
each time that they
hold on
have
to your value.
negotiated the contract, that has changed. We've gone from a percentage of a higher cost plan, which they negotiated down to the same percentage, but as a lower cost plan, so it did save the school money. And then in the last, support staff contract, it changed, as well as saying any new hires will pay this much, but we'll grandfather these people for the
Okay,
rest of this
yeah.
contract. So it's not like they're not whittling away at it and trying to get it down to a better percentage, but, you know, it's a give and take. We'll go down this way, but you've gotta give us this.
Right.
So, you know, it's gotta go bit by bit, but they have been working on it. Since I've been here, it's changed quite a lot.
But these are all great questions that Paul has, so that the public can hear what's really been going on, you
That's
know, that
right.
these things have been negotiated.
And I think
As you
another
know,
thing
it's
to remember
easy
is
to-
the term negotiation means just that. I mean, neither side can come in and say, look, this is where we're at. This is the way it's gonna be. You can't do that. That's not a negotiation. That's you can't go in, even though you have in mind what you think you should be doing and what you want to do.
Right.
You have to negotiate. You have
Well,
to go back and forth.
My vision of this school is that it is so excellent that, you know, there'll be elements more than money that will decide a teacher whether they want to come here or not, you know?
Yes.
If we have a lower, a lower copay, if we have middling or perhaps even slightly lower salary than school next door, but we're a much better place to work, we got a better environment, that counts for something,
Yes.
quality of life,
Definitely.
to me
does.
at least, matters more than how much I take home
Why we
every
have
year.
longevity here.
Yeah, that's why.
So
this is a big-
anyway, that is something that we have going for us on these contracts, at least once they're done. We don't necessarily have to pay a better dollar than the guy next door, as long as we have a more attractive environment in the overall package.
Paul?
And that's, intangible.
Paul, I
Yes.
think if you're money motivated, teaching is not the.
Right,
Oh.
you wouldn't be intentional. Thank
You're
you,
in
Chuck.
teaching because you like it to begin with.
Sure.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I don't, yeah,
I tell the kids it's for the fame and fortune,
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
to see my name in lights.
So it sounds like Paul wants to be a school committee member.
I know, I was just thinking that.
Can I?
On the next
I'll be a victim of the Peter principle.
We have any,
No, I think it's good because I mean it just brings up a lot of points as far as how the process works. It's not just
black and white, yeah, right.
having a determined number. For us to say, okay, we want a budget of 4.5 million
Oh, no.
instead of 4.9. I think that it should give people a much better perspective on how the budget
Yeah.
is built and how.
I think
the
I'm always shocked at that
contracts-
bottom line number, that's
Well, it is very
back a
shocking.
few years. Yes, Chuck?
The Blue Cross Blue Shield, that's your only choice.
Yes,
And why is that our only choice?
That's who.
because there's no insurance companies in Maine, except 3. Harvard Pilgrim won't even give us a number.
And that they gave you a too high a quote because they don't want the business in the first place.
I don't know, maybe they don't want to.
Well, they can't compete. MEA, it's through the MEA, and they have the bucks, and they've got 70,000 members. And so teachers pay less, school committees pay less for their insurance than the person in private enterprise, or if you buy it privately. You can't afford it unless you've got a copay that's so big that you have to have a real life-threatening event in order to collect on it.
I do.
But it is
Privately.
the MEA that drives
Drives it.
Anthem, because Sanford, for instance, are the only district in the state that's AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, and they have Aetna as a carrier, so it's,
But in the state of Maine, that's all you can get quotes from, even as a private citizen. There's no, you can't go over to New Hampshire and get, you can't. Not for health insurance. Car insurance, go online,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
It'll save you $485 a year.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I don't know, I've never had to shop for health insurance. So.
But it's like a monopoly, and that's what I was getting angry at
Don't
at
have it.
state
Pretty
level.
close.
I have the VA.
Oh, okay.
Vietnam veteran.
Yeah,
They take
okay.
very good care of me for about
Yeah.
$100 a year.
yeah, they do.
Very good.
Yep,
And thank you for your service.
yep. And my
I
brother too.
actually had fun over there.
Knock down words.
So much so that he joined the Warrant Finance Committee.
Thank you so much for your questions, Paul.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, were there
Just
any
trying to
other
make some sense of
pages
it.
here that we have to
Any other
look at?
things to look at? Any other suggestions?
I have sort of a final high-level observation here. Actually, and it starts with a question. Where do we stand in terms of budget reduction from last year? Just overall budget, understanding that the infamous $170,000 is gone.
We're
We've eaten some of
$42,000
that,
less.
so $42,000 less. Okay, so I want to point out what's gone on in the last couple of years, which is, going around 2 and 3 times before ratifying the budget. So we have a perception issue here that we want to start off on the right side of the fence when we go in for the first time to get the budget ratified. We have 2 new warrant articles, $25,000 apiece, one for the roof, one for the communication system. If we manage in our infinite wisdom to come up with more than what those budget articles are going to be going for in a reduction of the budget at large, we would have the perception, real or imaginary, of a reduced overall school budget for the year. In other words, if we're going to be putting forth this budget and asking for another $50,000, if the total is less than the current budget for this year, I think there would be much better momentum to ratify all 3 of those sets of business. If there is less than the $50,000 reduction in the main budget that we're discussing here, it's quite likely, in my opinion, that if people are thinking in that regard as opposed to budget increase, budget decrease, that they're going to choose a sacrificial cow here, and they're going to pick one, either the roof or the communication system, and vote in the negative, because doing anything less would increase the school budget.
Those 2 articles are gonna be on the town
meeting
meeting floor.
I understand that, but the perception is going to be that they are school articles, and right or wrong, perception is pretty much everything. That's what they're gonna be thinking of, I think.
So Carleen, figure-wise now, you said 40 what? 42
$42,183 reduction.
reduction? Okay, so and those 2 are $50,000.
So I'm merely putting that out
So we're talking about
there.
like $8,000.
Yeah. And they're done on separate days?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we vote,
So, I
town meeting is,
I find it wasteful to go through a budget ratification process 2 and 3 times when we're spending, probably $500 a pop every time we do it, and
No.
everybody's burning time. Nobody wants to do that. So,
Now, just for clarification, the 2 warrant articles, they go on the June town
Yes.
meeting.
that's
floor.
my impression,
That's where we're
yes.
They're not part of the working budget. They're not part of
right.
the number we have
They're-
here.
They're investments in the town's property.
It may be perception, but it's
And
not
really, that's
actual.
where the loan on the building in the first
But
place
it's
should have
two
gone.
different, it's not gonna
That's right.
be, these 2 warrant articles aren't gonna be here the night of the school vote or with the
That's right.
school.
Right.
This
Right.
is, it's almost like a capital improvement, on the town's.
It is a capital
Yeah,
improvement.
that's in the town's best interest to take care of their building. It has 0 to do with the school working budget. I mean,
Yes, that's why
like
we
you
took
said,
it
it's
out.
perception, it's absolutely not actual. And to try to go back and take $7,000 or $8,000 out just to meet the perception of something that isn't actual, it just doesn't make sense to me, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
I'm trying to make sure that we speak for
Right.
all the people we're gonna
And
be
that's what
hearing
I'm
from when we get out of this
I
meeting.
absolutely agree with that, and the people will get to speak on these 2 articles on town floor.
Right.
Because this is the town's building, actually, and it's up to the, just common sense, if it needs a roof repaired, that's up to the people. Do you fix the roof, or do you let it leak and destroy? But it's not, it absolutely is not part of the school's working budget, perception or not, I understand what you're thinking, And it may be spun that way, but that's not what it is, you know? I mean, to go back in and cut whatever that is, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 to try to meet the perception of some folks that may spin this into, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I will
You know what
admit
mean?
a certain degree of arbitrariness in that statement, yes.
But my thing is to let the people decide on the roof repair. If they feel we can wait another year, then that's what the vote will be, or, it'll be knocked down, but maybe they're thinking, well, maybe not this year, but next year, whatever. Because we don't know, I don't know what the other, town articles are. So it is gonna be up to the
Yeah,
town
I haven't
body to
seen them yet.
decide.
Certainly, I would expect that for both of those articles, though, there will be informed individuals who can comment to whatever the town needs to know about either of those.
Andy?
Exactly. And Mike.
I'm off the hook.
The roof leaks, then we can't use the
Andy and
telephone
Michael.
system.
So is that article there
I
being?
don't think you're getting away with
Is that
some.
gonna be, that's not gonna be dealt with by the school committee, that's gonna be done by the selectmen, right? It's
Selectmen.
their
Right.
warrant,
You say
their
yes or
warrant
no.
articles, they're
Right.
two separate. It has zero to do with this working budget and the
But
bottom line.
we'll provide them all the
I
information.
understand that, but it's not, it's their warrant, it's the town's building, it's not
Right.
part of this budget, you know? It's-
No, and the other thing to go along with what you just said, Paul, is that, to go back and try to figure out when we've sifted through this budget for how many weeks and months now, piece, by dollar, to go back and say, okay, we're gonna go back and try to take off another $8,000 someplace, then it's like, but we value everything that we have in here.
Right.
And why would we want to go back and take away something that we value and feel is necessary? If we didn't feel it was necessary for the children of the school, it wouldn't be in the budget as it is now anyway. So I would say, I hear what you're saying, and you're right. People are definitely going to say that, because it's all in the perception. It's not in the facts, it's always in the perception. So,
And we may be able to do that if the health insurance doesn't increase as much as it's expected to.
right.
We
So
won't
that's,
find that
there are
out.
still some unknowns in the budget that,
Right. Well, actually,
us.
in terms of the unknowns, the insurance, if it goes up 5% instead of 10%, what happens to the 5%? Is it able to be moved around
Well,
elsewhere in
well,
the budget?
What we would do is hopefully have that information before you go to vote, so it can become,
So would that actually
you'd
change
take,
the
you'd
warrant
pull
article?
that out.
right, it would.
That number
change
would
it.
change.
It would drop.
That'd be good.
But you're still talking about this working budget here, and those two articles going to town floor, what is the difference? What'd you say, $8,000 or something?
Max.
Yeah.
Or 60.
Yeah.
Max.
But-
It could
but
be less, but.
If the insurance comes through at less than 10%,
Right.
let's say it comes through at 3%, that's about $14,000. So there's your 8 and a 5 additional. In addition to that, we're going to receive, your net budget's going to be less than what we had initially proposed. So,
I understand exactly where Paul's coming from,
I-
especially after what the town's been through over the last few years, it gets confusing, But, and it's, every point he's bringing up here tonight is legitimate, it's creating conversation, but, clarity too, I think, moving forward.
One vote would be nice.
One time would be very nice.
Right. I mean, I think, to me, that would say the most about the success of our time spent here. To add to our virtual budget, we don't know, I'll throw out on the table, we don't know a lot about the credit side of the budget. We don't know what we're getting, basically
Proposed.
what we're gonna be able to net against in order to go against tax receipts. So we have no idea at this time where that's gonna fall
I'll
in
give
relation
you
to
rough
last year.
numbers. You
Okay.
Got a pencil and paper?
Sure.
General purpose aid is projected at $184,187.
What was that number again?
184, 187.
Do you have a net in comparison with last year? Or
I don't-
gross, shall we say?
Well, it was
Somewhere-
I may,
269?
I may have, I'd have to go.
What'd you say,
Wrote it all down here.
269,000?
Yeah.
Yes.
We have nutrition. We're projecting $65,000 in revenue. In the last 2 years, last 3 years, 2 years, it's been approximately $15,000 more than that. Don't plan on it, but it's projected, we're projecting 65. We're not counting the Medicare. In the past, we've projected upwards to $50,000, and it's always exceeded that amount.
So right now, you're not.
We're not
counting it,
projecting
But you
anything.
may get something.
We may.
Okay.
We haven't got any this year.
Yeah.
They haven't sent a penny.
The well's drying up, so
Right.
let's just see what happens.
Nutrition, edu jobs, we received $58,000 roughly. We banked, or we spent 5,000. We banked 53. That's a revenue, one time, 2012 fiscal year only. So you can't plan on it going forward. So with those numbers, you have,
Well, the GPA last year was 261.7.
right,
Wow, that's a big hit to make up.
yep, it is. But we don't have a 169 to take away from it.
That's our.
Okay, so that was what was going against debt service.
Yeah.
So it's possible that we won't be behind the 8 ball when, when we get to that point.
So we're going to have projected revenue of about 200,000, give or take.
Now, this is projected. When are those numbers solidified? When do you get
Well,
the?
we received the state's projection, the earliest that I can recall, in the last 4 years. Usually it's been May, June, right up to the final gun. You have to have a budget by July, 1st of July.
So it's 200 in comparison with last year's what?
261,
Okay, so 61 less, but $170,000 less to pay
Right.
out.
Right,
because of the-
exactly.
yeah. And actually, we projected more than, 190 some. 194 we projected last year, because we had the penalty. Then in November, the penalty was released, and we received an additional $100,000, $102,000, all of which we've just talked about. So, on the revenue side, we'll be better than we were a year ago. Not by a whole lot,
A
but
little
better.
bit.
But we don't have the $170,000.
So I'm gonna dare to be
service fee.
slightly optimistic.
Yeah. You have to remember the $169,000 in debt service was a wash. We never received it.
Right.
It paid off our debt,
But
which
it
was a
wasn't,
part of our regular
the funds
budget.
we were receiving was not predicated on having that
Right.
debt though, so it does go somewhere else and
Right.
is valid to discuss.
So it didn't have any impact on your budget, basically. And we won't have that base this year. Now, the projections that the governor has made are dependent on several different things. One, is he gonna get $22 million somewhere in savings in the state government to put into the pot? We had anticipated between $73,000 and $100,000. But the 22 million that he put into the federal, to the aid to education, allowed him to redistribute that, but that hasn't been approved by the legislature. And with the way the economy's been going, even if they approve it, you could wind up in September, October with another curtailment.
No, we don't wanna end up like Sanford, so
No.
let's not depend on anything that
Right.
isn't here yet.
Yeah. So, I think your school committee, and certainly the staff, have done a great job in getting the budget into a position where it's less than it was a year ago. And the potential for being even a less net budget is good for the community. And if we're able to do that and get the other two things that they're going to do on the town side, then we would be in good shape for another year. But in another year, you're going to lose that 52,000, 53,000 that we banked. So if you have to hire a new teacher, next year's budget automatically is up by 53 or 50, whatever the cost might be.
There goes the paper.
What part of the roof is gone?
It's over the gym.
Is it leaking already?
It's leaked on a couple of occasions.
Windy, rainy.
Yeah.
What type of roof?
Is it
I know that kind of roof.
seams?
It's got asphalt shingles on it.
How
old are they?
1990, so they'll be 21 years old.
So it's coming up.
Was it, how many year roof is it?
Typically, it's
Shingles, I
20,
mean, it's-
thereabouts.
1990,
25 or 30,
Yeah.
no, though,
Yeah.
the shingle itself, is it a 25?
Well, I believe
or-
that
Yeah.
they've got fiberglass in them, so, I mean, basically, I would be looking to replace them with a 30-year architectural,
That's everything, stripping it and putting
Yep.
in,
looking for a turnkey package.
Does the selectmen put that out to bid? Is that how they do it, where it's their?
They will,
They will.
Right, I mean, that's who we're,
yeah.
yeah.
That job not feasible? Still got your pump jacks?
Little vocational training for a few kids?
Yeah,
There you go. That's what
get
Mr.
about 50
LePage
stripping
was
shovels
saying.
and,
Any other questions on the budget at all?
I simply have a walk-away question having to do with procedural in the next week or two, but we might as well get finished with whatever is to discuss on the budget proper before that.
I think we're probably all ready to walk away.
Are you sure?
Drive home?
I don't know, if the seats were padded, I might stay a little longer, but
I don't know, I think that, the last workshop that we had, I mean, I think that the school committee as well as the warrant and finance, we had great discussion, and I think that we really clarified a lot of the things as far as any questions that we would have.
The other piece of that, Paul, next week, the school committee meets on the 8th. They will be approving this budget as been discussed here, or something that reflects that. And we will then develop the final warrant questions, articles. And then the 14th of March, we will get together with you, and you folks will vote to either support, silence, or be against.
I find the 1 week gap between those two meetings to be somewhat precipitous.
Meaning, that's too big a word for my understanding.
Abrupt,
Okay.
quick.
You think it's too soon?
Well, not too soon, in the budget year necessarily, but, okay. I'll sort of recap my thoughts as I'm looking at those 2 dates, okay? So we've got tomorrow, this committee has a meeting that's already been arranged, and it can't really be delayed because it involves a lot of parties talking about the municipal budget. And we also have, during the coming week, we have a selectmen's meeting, which we don't, it'd be probably a good idea not to be blowing off. Another meeting or two, basically, it leaves us with Friday. Okay, we also can't meet Thursday because Chuck's got a prior commitment as well, so basically, as far as meeting nights, I see Friday for the whole shebang to be discussing all of these warrant articles for the school. Now, it may go like that, or we may be burning the midnight oil. It's yet to be determined.
wait, Friday, what
But
day?
you have a 2-week window now.
It's not a 2-week window, it's
Well,
8 to the
from next
14th.
Friday. Well, you can assume
Well, we don't.
that we're not gonna change anything.
Okay, well, we won't have the warrant articles, I guess is what I'm
Okay.
saying, until the 8th.
I can do them for you before
and-
that, as a draft.
When is the warrant and finance meeting?
For what now?
With us,
No. Your next meeting,
Our next meeting's tomorrow night.
I thought you said something about Friday night.
Our meeting for the discussion of the warrant articles that will be released on the 8th is going to be on the 11th, which is a Friday evening.
okay.
And at this moment, I'm sort of thinking, okay, well, if we need to, we're gonna do the Saturday. I don't know if we will or not. It would be foolish not to have a
This is
contingency
at the
plan.
town hall.
This would be at
At
the
what
town
time?
hall. Friday, our normal meetings are at 6:30, because it's a reasonable compromise between the 6 and the 7.
Friday is.
how would this
Do
help?
what?
That's for
That
us
will
to
be
vote.
for us officially voting on the warrant articles that will be released on the 8th.
We can't do the
You
11th.
can't be here on the 11th.
On the 11th. Okay, well, I guess we're gonna have to do the Saturday then.
Paul,
Do that.
how would it help you if I did the draft warrant articles this week at some point in time, when I get a minute? And I send those to you,
Right? And then we can.
you can share them.
Then we can do
The,
it
the,
quicker.
the draft warrant articles are pretty straightforward. All you do is plug the
Plugging in a
number
different
in.
number.
We'll plug the numbers in as we have discussed them tonight.
Right.
And then, if there are changes or decisions made that either increase or decrease, that'll be done next. So you'll have had a chance to look at all the warrant articles with numbers in them. I can't imagine that a whole lot of it's gonna change,
Okay.
other than maybe.
That would be helpful.
Okay.
You know, the sooner the quicker.
Okay,
That
I'll
gives
do
us
that.
more opportunity, because
Okay.
otherwise it's like, you know, there's sort of lumbering process, you know,
No.
as the season progresses, and all of a sudden you
Yeah,
go,
see, we're focused
You
on
blink, you're
one
gonna miss
thing, we forget that you're focused on more than one
Now,
thing.
the school committee, when do you vote on your warrant articles?
Next
Yeah,
Tuesday.
Next
right.
Tuesday, you
On the-
know,
on the- what is that,
basically.
the 8th?
The
Yeah, on
8th.
the 8th. You know, in the past, I don't remember, I think it's great that we've got a better system now that gives the warrant and finance committee more, understanding what's actually in the budget by meeting together as many times as we have. But, in the past, as I recall, we have met with the warrant and finance committee. Once we had our budget articles done, we have had a meeting with the warrant and finance committee where they talk and go over it with us and make their recommendations or whatever.
that's the 14th, correct?
Right.
That's the 14th.
Right. You're coming
The-
here?
And then if you,
Isn't that at the gym, in the
It says-
auditorium?
Well, it says Acton, I don't know why we have to sit in there.
No.
It says right here, Acton School
Acton School
Gym. What are
Gym,
we
yeah.
sitting in there for?
Because we're gonna have a huge audience, of course.
We
Well,
are?
that's what we're expecting, yes.
Oh, okay.
we are,
We're gonna have a huge audience, right?
That shouldn't be.
So the school committee votes on their budget on the 8th.
Right.
And we're meeting, discussing, and we're voting the night of the 14th.
Right.
Now, was there
Right.
another meeting that you had scheduled
You
after
don't
Well-
need to
so
be
why
here.
did you?
Do I need to be
Well,
here?
I had a meeting scheduled on the 11th because we needed to make the official recommendations as a group, standalone,
But that's for
You
you.
do
for
that.
that meeting on the 14th.
No, you do that at the meeting on the
Yeah,
14th.
we do that. That's all-
Do it right
that's
after meeting on the 14th.
Okay, so we're sitting there, burning time discussing each of these things and voting as a committee, and then you're sort of taking it direct.
Yeah, but you've already been here many, many
Right,
times. I
right.
mean, it shouldn't, I mean,
Repetitive
either
at this
did you
point.
did twice.
Well, some of you have been here every time we've discussed the budget.
Right.
Well,
That's the
for
point. I
this,
think
for this particular purpose, I mean, I've
Which I
been
think-
sitting in this chair twice.
I have to tell you, it's great that that's happened.
Yeah,
to have you
and
here.
we really, we as a board appreciate that, because we feel like we've had a chance to tell you where the budget comes from and why we're asking for what we're asking for. And, so that there's a better understanding, so it's not just like, well, this is it, and, there's nothing padded in there anywhere. Mike?
So,
4 minutes, counting down.
Okay,
so on the 8th, you're gonna vote.
we're gonna vote on the
Your
articles.
articles, and then on the 14th, we'll come in, I'm sure some of us will be at your meeting on the 8th, so we'll know how they voted. We have the budget, we've gone over the budget, fairly substantial, I would think, And then that night of the 14th, we can discuss it. That would be our meeting, is that
It
correct?
is basically
Yeah.
your
That's
meeting.
your
And we
meeting,
come-
that's your meeting.
Right.
When and where?
That's
on
at the town
14th?
hall.
That's at the town hall on the
But the
14th.
8th is here, it's their meeting, the 14th is ours, and we'll discuss
Well,
the
the
articles.
14th
Well, the
says school
14th
gym.
in the school gym.
If
Oh, it
you
is.
want,
Yes.
if you
If you want to do it at town hall.
wanna do town hall,
It
we'll go
doesn't
to town
matter,
hall.
either
You know,
place is
it's
fine.
probably better at town hall, and if you publicize this meeting and call it a public hearing for the school budget and
Well,
warrant finance.
it's already on the webpage and
Yeah, we can just discuss
on the
it.
cable as being in the school gym.
Yeah.
So we'll just.
Okay.
Oh, okay, well, that
All right,
doesn't, right,
well,
okay.
whatever.
Yep.
All right.
I took one of the selectmen
So
at
the
his word
14th
when
is
he
here,
told me
and that's
to
our
schedule it
meeting.
here.
Right, I mean, I don't feel personally that I'm gonna be taking one in the back if I come to the school to talk about
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
school budget stuff.
6?
14th, 6 PM.
6 o'clock. Yep.
We're almost out of time, according to Mike, we have about 2 minutes.
Okay, then I'll take 20 seconds and say, gee, regarding this contract that is not yet formed, are any of the terms as expected and as budgeted potentially gonna change in a downward direction? Or are we
I think it would be-
foolhardy to assume
To
that
be
it's
honest, that
gonna
would be
happen?
inappropriate for me to respond to that. It's a negotiations, it's a private, till it's done, the school committee hasn't had that information,
Okay,
so I wouldn't want to announce it on television.
I'll take that as a fair answer,
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
and I'm done yipping.
Thank you.
If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Amen.
We need a second.
That was a second.
All in favor?
That it?
Thank you very much.